My name is Vanessa Doyle. I'm 36 years old, born and raised in Vermont. And until recently, I thought loyalty to your family was supposed to mean something. I spent 12 years helping my father and brother grow our family's business. I sacrificed weekends, birthdays, relationships. I gave them my time, my ideas, my silence. But apparently, none of that mattered when it came time to decide who gets credit, who gets to sit at the table, and who gets shut out. Before I share how I built a company that crushed the very empire they built without me, I want to thank you for being here. If you've ever felt underestimated, excluded, or betrayed by the people closest to you, this story is for you. Please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. It helps others like us find these stories, and maybe even find their own strength in them. They say family businesses are built on trust. What they don't say is how fragile that trust becomes when credit, legacy, and power are on the line. I'm Vanessa Doyle, and for the past 11 years, I've poured everything I had into Doyle & Sons. The sons part? That was always a joke in our family. There was only one actual son, Matthew, my older brother by 5 years. But I was the one with the MBA, the one who restructured our supply chain during COVID, the one who negotiated our most critical partnership in 2021 when our operations were hanging by a thread. And yet, to the world, and apparently to my own family, I didn't exist. It happened on a Tuesday. I was in the office, like always, buried in spreadsheets. We were about to finalize a new vendor contract, and I had spent the weekend going through the fine print. No one asked me to. I just knew if I didn't, no one would. At 3:02 p.m., my phone buzzed. Company-wide email. Subject line, exciting new chapter for Doyle & Sons. I opened it. And there it was, a full-color press release, already published on our site and sent to industry media. There was a photo at the top. My father, Henry Doyle, standing next to Matthew in front of our gleaming new headquarters. They looked like a proud generational duo, visionary, decisive, united. My eyes scanned the paragraphs that followed. Something in me was already bracing. The copy read smoothly, full of phrases like bold expansion, forward-thinking leadership, and continuing a proud family legacy. Except, there was no mention of me. Not even a passing line. Not even a special thanks. Just Henry and Matthew. As if I'd never been there at all. At first, I thought I missed it. I reread the whole thing, slower. Then again. Still nothing. My chest felt hollow. I wasn't just overlooked. I'd been erased. I stared at the screen, my hands motionless on the keyboard. In the reflection, I could see my own face, expressionless, except for that tiny twitch in my jaw that always comes when I try not to cry. I got up, walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and just breathed. Deep and slow, the way my therapist taught me. 4 seconds in, hold, 4 seconds out. Again. I called my father first, straight to voicemail. Then I tried Matthew. He picked up on the 4th ring. Hey, what's up? Did you see the press release? I asked. A pause. Yeah, looks good, right? You forgot someone. Another pause, longer this time. Then he chuckled, that condescending Matthew chuckle I'd hated since we were kids. Vanessa, come on. It's a press release. Just PR. Don't take it so personally. I didn't respond. I mean, it's not like He started, but I hung up before he could finish the sentence. It wasn't just PR. And I wasn't just being sensitive. This was about something else. Something bigger. Something I didn't want to admit yet, even to myself. The next morning, I confronted my father in person. He was in his office, feet up on the desk, sipping coffee from his old Number One Dad mug. That mug always made me laugh when I was younger. Now it just looked like a prop in a show I was no longer a part of. I wasn't in the press release, I said, closing the door behind me. He looked up. What? My name. It wasn't there. Not once. He frowned like he didn't understand the issue. It's just a formality. PR team wrote it up with the agency. You know how those things go. No, I don't, I said. Because I wasn't even told it was happening. He sighed. Vanessa, you're part of the company. Everyone knows that. Apparently not. He gave me a look I knew too well, the one he used when he was done with a conversation but didn't want to be the bad guy. You're overthinking it. I stared at him for a moment. Then I nodded. Okay. I turned and left without another word. But inside, something had changed. A quiet click, like a lock sliding into place. That night, I looked back through my calendar. 11 years of meetings, emails, trips, all the late nights, the weekends I skipped weddings and birthdays for, the crises I helped fix, the deals I brokered, and then I looked at the door of our office building, the one with our name engraved in metal, Doyle and Sons. Not Doyle Family, not Doyle Enterprises. Sons, just Sons. I had convinced myself for years that the name didn't matter, that my work spoke louder, that my place was earned, not given. But the name did matter, especially when I realized they'd never planned to include me, because they never saw me as one of them. I was good enough to solve problems, to clean up after mistakes, to stay late, but not good enough to be seen, or credited, or trusted with real power. And the worst part, I had let them. There's a picture in my father's study, a big one, framed in walnut, hanging right above the leather couch he naps on every afternoon like clockwork. It was taken at our company's 30-year anniversary gala. In that photo, he's got one arm around Matthew, the other around my mother. My brother's in a sharp navy suit, beaming. Mom, graceful as ever, in a silver dress she'd had tailored in Milan. And I'm there too, just barely. Off to the side, cropped by the edge of the frame, laughing at something someone said. You can't even see my whole face. I didn't think much of it when it went up. Maybe the photographer just took a bad shot. Maybe it was the best option they had. That's what I told myself. But now, 2 weeks after the press release, I can't stop seeing that picture for what it really is. It wasn't a bad shot. It was a message. One I refused to read for years. Things started shifting after that email. Not just emotionally, but logistically. Subtle at first. I stopped getting copied on certain emails. Meetings I used to lead were suddenly reorganized or moved without notice. Decisions were made before I walked into the room. I'd built our analytics dashboard from scratch. Suddenly, a junior analyst was presenting updates I hadn't seen. I used to be the final review on contracts. Now Matthew was the go-to for approvals. It was like watching my job disappear in pieces, while still being expected to show up and smile. I brought it up to human resources. Or rather, I tried. Our HR director, Laura, was a college friend of Matthew's. She'd always been polite, if a little stiff with me. "Hi, Laura," I said one morning, stepping into her office. "Do you have a few minutes?" She glanced up from her laptop. "Of course. What's going on?" "I've noticed I'm not included in some of the key meetings lately. Vendor calls, budget reviews, leadership syncs. I just want to make sure I haven't missed something." She blinked. "Oh, I'm sure it's just a communication slip. With the expansion, everything's been moving fast." "Right," I nodded. "But I'd like to be added back to the calendar invites. It's hard to do my job otherwise." She gave a tight smile. "I'll look into it." She didn't. Nothing changed. A week later, I walked past the conference room during our quarterly strategy session, one I'd organized for the past 3 years, and saw the door closed, all the execs inside, without me. I stood there for a second, unsure if I should knock or walk away. Then Matthew glanced up through the glass. Our eyes met. He didn't wave me in. He just looked back down at his tablet. That night, I went to dinner with my mother. She'd always been my soft place to land. Quiet, observant, not confrontational, but deeply intuitive. If anyone would understand, it would be her. We sat at our usual table at Solari's, the Italian place on West 56th. She ordered halibut. I got my usual gnocchi. When the waiter left, I leaned in. "Mom, do you think Dad and Matthew are pushing me out of the company?" She paused mid-sip of wine. "What makes you say that?" I told her everything. The press release, the meetings, HR, the silence. She didn't argue, didn't rush to defend them. Instead, she placed her hand on mine. "Sweetheart," she said, "I think they've made some decisions you weren't part of." I stared at her. "And you're okay with that?" "I didn't say that." "Then why haven't you said anything to Dad?" She looked down at her plate. "Because I've learned not to get involved in what your father calls business matters." I pushed back from the table, heart thudding. "So that's it? I just accept it?" "No," she said softly. "But you need to decide what kind of power you want to have. The kind they hand to you, or the kind you build yourself." I didn't sleep that night. I thought about every sacrifice I'd made to be part of that company. Every moment I let my identity be swallowed by it. I thought being family meant I had a seat at the table. But family, in our business, had always meant one thing: bloodline and birth order. Matthew was the heir. I was the afterthought, and maybe I always had been. The final straw came on a Friday morning. A junior assistant I'd trained, fresh out of college, still unsure how to forward a calendar invite, walked up to my desk, flustered. Vanessa? I'm sorry. I was told to clean out your office. I didn't know you'd still be here." I blinked. "What?" "Laura said you'd been moved to, downstairs, next to the print server." I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. She looked terrified. I walked straight to my father's office. The door was open. He looked up. "Vanessa, you moved me downstairs?" He closed his laptop. "It's just temporary. We're reorganizing some space. Don't make this dramatic." "Is Matthew moving too?" "No." "Then it's not temporary. It's punishment." He stood up slowly. "You need to understand something. This company needs leadership that commands respect. Your brother has a presence you don't." I stared at him, stunned. a presence. He's decisive, bold. People listen to him. And me? You're detail-oriented, reliable, but not someone I see as the face of Doyle and Sons. There it was. The truth, sharp and ugly, like a blade pulled from under the desk, not someone I see. That sentence stayed with me as I packed up my office. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because it told me exactly where I stood. Outside the photo, outside the narrative, outside the legacy, but not for long, because if they couldn't see me, I would make damn sure they couldn't ignore me. Not anymore. After that conversation with Dad, after being packed off to the print server dungeon, as I quietly started calling my new desk, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just hurt or anger anymore. It was resolve. I spent that weekend alone, in my apartment, staring at the city lights, running through every memory of my years at Doyle and Sons. The late nights I stayed to finish reports no one else wanted. The calls I took when clients asked for help after hours. The times I patched holes in projects Matthew had missed. And none of it mattered, because none of it counted. That Monday, I showed up at the office early. Too early for anyone but me. I sat at my cramped desk, cleared the clutter, and opened a blank document on my laptop. I didn't start with, what do I want to do? I started with, what do they want me to believe I am? Invisible, irrelevant, a placeholder. I typed the words out. I let the frustration fuel the rhythm of my typing. Then I stopped. I thought, what if I flipped it? What if being underestimated, ignored, and dismissed was exactly the advantage I needed? They were playing their game by old rules: family loyalty, hierarchy, tradition. I could rewrite those rules. I pulled out a notebook I'd kept since college, filled with ideas, dreams, plans I never had the time to pursue because the family business swallowed every waking hour. I flipped through pages of sketches, notes, and half-baked startups. I realized I had everything I needed: knowledge, experience, connections. I just needed to believe in my own vision. I started drafting a plan, a company that would compete directly with Doyle and Sons, but in a smarter, leaner, more innovative way. While they doubled down on legacy and tradition, I would bet on agility and technology. I reached out to a few trusted contacts, some old colleagues who'd left Doyle's in frustration, some university friends with expertise in digital marketing and software development. I didn't tell them about my family drama, just that I was ready to build something new. By the end of the week, I had a rough business model, a list of potential investors, and a pitch deck that could rival anything my brother's PR team could put together. I kept all of this secret. No Facebook posts, no casual mentions. Silence was my shield. I didn't want Matthew or Dad to see me coming. Meanwhile, at Doyle and Sons, I kept playing the part. Polite, quiet, competent. But inside, I was building a storm. One morning, during a routine sales meeting, I listened as Matthew bragged about how Doyle and Sons was untouchable in the market. I raised my hand, just once. What about the growing demand for digital solutions in our sector? I asked. Are we investing enough there? I've been looking at some trends that suggest competitors who innovate will outpace us. Matthew smirked. We have tradition and trust. That's our advantage. No need to chase every fad. The room nodded. I forced a smile. Tradition can't protect us forever, I thought. Later that day, I booked a small conference room on the side of the building. I called my team, a group of outsiders and insiders alike who believed in change. We talked late into the evening. Ideas flowed. I felt alive for the first time in months. I wasn't just fighting to be part of a family business anymore. I was fighting to build my own. The week after, I submitted my resignation. That moment was one of the hardest and the most liberating of my life. I told Dad over the phone. "Vanessa," he said, voice thick with disappointment, "you're making a mistake. Doyle & Sons is a legacy. You'll regret this." "I'm done waiting for a seat at a table I'm not allowed to sit at," I said. "I'm building my own table." The days that followed were a blur of meetings with potential investors, signing leases on office space, hiring my first employees. There were sleepless nights, moments of doubt, and more than a few close calls. But every time I wanted to quit, I remembered the look on Matthew's face when he closed that door on me. The dismissive way Dad spoke about my lack of presence. I was building not just a company, but a statement. Something they couldn't ignore. Because when you're pushed out of the family empire, sometimes the only way to win is to build a new empire, one they never saw coming. Launching my own company was like stepping off a cliff with no parachute, terrifying, exhilarating, and completely irreversible. The weeks leading up to launch day were a non-stop whirlwind. I was juggling investor meetings, hiring decisions, product development, and marketing strategies. Every email felt like a ticking time bomb, every phone call a test of my resolve. The pressure was crushing, but I refused to let it break me. I still remember that early spring morning when everything was finally set. The small office I'd rented was buzzing with energy. My team and I were crammed in a space much smaller and less glamorous than Doyle & Sons headquarters. But it was ours. Mine. We gathered around the conference table, laptops open, fingers poised over keyboards, hearts pounding. "Today's the day," I said, trying to sound confident but feeling a knot of nerves in my stomach. No one answered. They didn't need to. We all knew what was at stake. Our website went live at 9 a.m. sharp. I watched the traffic stats climb, 100, then 500, then 1,000 visitors. Orders started coming in. Messages from customers poured in praising our fresh approach, the ease of use, the personal touch. And then the shock came. By noon, the news broke that Doyle & Sons had caught wind of my launch. My phone rang nonstop. Reporters, investors, friends, even people I hadn't spoken to in years were calling to congratulate me. But not everyone was happy. That same afternoon, I got a call from my dad. "Vanessa." His voice was strained. "This isn't how we do things. You're crossing a line." "I'm just doing what you never let me do," I replied, my voice steady despite the rage simmering beneath. "Think about the family, Vanessa. You're making this personal." "It is personal," I said. "You shut me out. I'm only fighting back." After that call, I realized something fundamental had changed. I was no longer the daughter trying to find her place. I was a rival. I spent the next few days fielding calls, negotiating contracts, and riding a wave of adrenaline I'd never experienced before. Matthew's response was predictable but vicious. He launched a smear campaign, quietly spreading rumors about my lack of experience and reckless ambition. Clients loyal to Doyle & Sons were pressured to avoid my company, but the backlash only fueled my determination. Every obstacle, every insult, every closed door was a challenge I accepted and overcame. By the end of that first month, my startup had carved out a niche, taking clients from the very company I'd grown up in. It wasn't just business, it was a personal victory. The family I once called mine had built an empire, but now they were watching mine rise from the shadows. And the game was only just beginning. After the initial shock of my company's launch, things started to heat up in ways I hadn't fully anticipated. At first, the competition was just business. Contracts won, clients lost, market shares shifting. But soon, it crossed a line. It became personal. It started subtly. A few snide comments in meetings when I wasn't present. Emails forwarded with sarcastic remarks. Then came the calls to my investors, questioning their involvement. Whispers about my family drama becoming a liability. But the worst was the damage to my reputation. Things I couldn't control. Rumors seeded by Matthew's network. One day, a longtime client called me, voice tight with doubt. "Vanessa, I'm hearing things. About you. About your past. Are you sure this is the right move?" I wanted to scream, to shout, to tell them it was none of their business. But I kept calm. I'm running this company with integrity. Let's focus on that. But the pressure was relentless. At home, my phone would ring at all hours. Anonymous threats, calls from blocked numbers. My team felt it too. Some grew nervous, others pushed harder. Then came the most painful blow. At a family gathering, one I thought I could still salvage, Matthew cornered me. "You think you're better than us now?" he sneered. I looked him in the eye. "No," I said quietly. "I just refuse to be invisible." He laughed coldly. "You'll never be part of this family." That moment broke something inside me. I realized I wasn't just fighting a business battle. I was fighting for respect, for recognition, for dignity. But I also knew one thing. I wouldn't back down. The fight was far from over, and I was ready to face whatever came next. By the time I reached this point, I knew I couldn't fight the family empire on their terms. They had resources, connections, and years of goodwill stacked in their favor. But I had something else, the freedom to move fast, to innovate, to take risks they never would. So I stopped trying to beat them at their game. Instead, I built a new one. I sat down with my team, some of the sharpest minds I'd gathered along the way. We mapped out Doyle and Son's weaknesses, their slow decision-making, outdated systems, rigid hierarchy. We mapped our strengths, agility, digital-first approach, personalized service. We started targeting niches they ignored, customizing, solutions for clients tired of the one-size-fits-all model. We rolled out features faster than they could blink. I leveraged social media, not as a billboard, but as a conversation, engaging customers, sharing stories, building loyalty, and it worked. Clients who had felt ignored by Doyle started calling us one by one. Their biggest accounts shifted. The pressure on my old family grew visible. Matthew's smug confidence gave way to desperation. I got wind that they were trying to undercut us with pricing schemes, lock-in contracts, even legal threats. But I had prepared for this. Every contract we signed was airtight. Every marketing move carefully planned. And when they tried to intimidate my investors, I doubled down on transparency, hosting open forums, Q&A sessions, demonstrating our commitment to ethics and innovation. I remember one evening, late after, a grueling day, I got an email from a client who had been with Doyle's for decades. They wrote, "Vanessa, your company feels different. Like you actually care. We're switching." That was the moment it hit me. I wasn't just building a company, was changing an industry. I was rewriting my story, and Doyle and Sons, they were now the ones playing catch-up. After months of relentless work, sleepless nights, and battles on every front, my company was thriving. The once untouchable Doyle and Sons was visibly shaken. I had done what they said was impossible. I had built something that not only rivaled theirs but was growing faster and gaining real loyalty. The victory felt sweet, but it was also complicated. Business headlines started to feature me prominently. The media painted the family feud as a dramatic saga, which I hated but also couldn't deny gave me a platform. Investors were impressed, customers were loyal, my team was energized. But at home, things were tense. Family gatherings became cold, strained affairs. My dad avoided eye contact. Matthew openly ignored me. Mom, caught in the middle, tried to act neutral, but her pain was obvious. One evening, after a particularly awkward dinner, my dad finally spoke. Vanessa, we lost more than just business in this fight. We lost each other. I felt my throat tighten. Maybe, I said, but you left me out of something I was part of. I wasn't just a kid helping out. I was family. Matthew scoffed. Family? You think business is about feelings? It's about loyalty. I shook my head. No, it's about respect. And you lost that when you shut me out. That conversation was the turning point. We all realized that the real cost of this war was the family itself. I wondered if victory was worth it without the people I grew up with. But I also knew something else. I had carved my own path, earned my own name, and maybe that was the truest victory of all. After the dust settled and the family ties frayed beyond repair, I found myself standing at a crossroads. The company I'd built was no longer just a rebellion or a statement. It was a legacy I wanted to nurture. I realized that to truly thrive, I needed to focus not on what I'd taken from my family, but on what I could create for my future. I poured everything into shaping a company culture that valued transparency, respect, and innovation, things that had been sorely missing in Doyle and Sons. I started mentoring young women in business, sharing my story not as a cautionary tale, but as proof that exclusion didn't have to define you. And slowly the wounds began to heal, not with my family, but within myself. I learned to separate the pain of betrayal from the pride in my accomplishments. I redefined what family meant to me. It wasn't blood or business, but trust and support. My company became more than a competitor. It became a community. We launched initiatives to give back, to empower, to build a new kind of success, one that was measured not just in dollars, but in impact. And as I stood in the glow of a sunset, watching my team celebrate another milestone, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. I wasn't just the girl who was left out anymore. I was Vanessa Doyle, founder, leader,